Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Influential Oregonian, where we have discussions on Oregon history and academics and interview important people who have made history within or in the name of the Beaver State. I'm your host, Marcus Saxford from the show Welcome to Oregon, joined by my boon companions, archaeologists David Winkler and Finn J.D. John of Offbeat Oregon. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Marcus.
Great to be here again.
I hope everyone enjoyed last week's show. We certainly had a fun time doing it. I know it's going to be some time before we really get the grease on the wheels, but we are well on our way, and I do have plenty to say about that. But first, let me introduce our guest for today. He is a speaker, historian, and a videographer who travels more than 6,000 miles each year to document and present all kinds of stories on Oregon and its history at libraries, service clubs, retirement facilities, and other venues, according to his LinkedIn, anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Darrell Jabin, also known as Oregon's traveling historian. Darrell, welcome.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yay, we're all here. Second time.
And I could have chosen a better background. I look like I'm the mug shot here for
I know.
That's him, officer. That's the historian.
There we are.
just
Yes,
just
indeed.
tack a yardstick to the walls, so get
Is that it?
that.
Okay.
That's gonna be the thumbnail. Is I'm gonna get Kenny to Photoshop the whole backdrop.
Oh boy,
Yes, indeed.
one of those like chalkboard things that says,
Yeah, the height. Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Now, do we have to do this interview good cop, bad cop style? Because I want to be the neutral cop.
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Oh, call me.
Oh yeah, right. Because okay, I get it. So I was like,
Uh-oh.
what? I just lost the punchline right in the middle of the joke. That was just great. I have this raging head cold, so I'm not thinking super clearly. So you're not going to find me at my witty best today, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be going around, or stuff is going around apparently, because not to jump ahead, although I did that last time. You got to take your story hooks where you can get them. David and I are going to be seeing each other in person later today because we're finally getting into our in-person D&D that I am DMing.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
very
that's
nice.
right. I thought you were talking about the parking lot fight.
Well,
Wow. Okay.
no, I was talking about how Lance is at home sick, unfortunately, and we're gonna
Um,
try to do the thing on Discord. But yeah, sure, let's talk about that.
Parking lot fight?
oh yeah, yeah. This
Are
has
you
been a long
kidding?
time coming.
Yeah. I mean, I really
Five
should.
steel?
I
there,
mean,
there can only be one ginger that does history.
oh, I thought we were talking about the hobo fight that I bet $500 on and lost. Oh no.
No, no, we quit doing those.
Oh God. So yes, before we get into David and Finn's stuff, let's quickly talk about the what the show's going to kind of look like going forward. Finn, you mentioned the possibility of maybe um kind of looking into the frequency of our guest shows, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds of it because with what you were talking about, I think it's a great idea. Although of course with my own show I'm impatient for biweekly stuff. So you were talking about how we could do guests every other week, and then kind of in between, we'll just have smaller or however many episodes to,
A mini-sode,
yeah,
yeah.
minisode, yes, to do our
I
own
think
personal
that would
stuff.
probably be more sustainable because, finding guests of the quality of Darrell is, I mean, there's a relatively there's a relatively limited number, and we're gonna burn through all of our potential candidates in just a couple of months. So
Yes. Well, it also gives a chance every other week to uh, kind of check in with everyone else too. Our audience on where we're at with everything with with the network, with shows, with other stuff. I will say though that this model is going to be a little ways out because I already booked 3 people. This is one of them.
Whee!
I'll just
We're gonna burn through them all right now. We're gonna have a whole bunch of mini-sodes. It's like, well,
you know, I'll
too early to bring Darrell back on.
well, you know what, and that's just it. We can always have guests reappear. I'm sure Darrell will be happy to come back on.
Yeah, Victor again. That's great.
Yep. I've got.
I hope so. Although we don't want to be a burden on anybody. So, yeah.
Yes, that spotlight is such a heavy burden.
Well, I mean, it's a Saturday morning.
Oh.
It's there's a sacrifice involved with getting on Zoom and devoting Saturday morning to hanging out with us, and we appreciate it very much. But we don't want to take it for granted and expect a whole bunch and require our guests to say no to us on occasion.
Oh no, that's
Am I
absolutely fair.
making any sense? I feel like I'm stuttering here.
That's
so.
a good point. Don't worry about it. That's a good point.
Ladies and gentlemen, let it be known that it's 3 people with severe anxiety and awkwardness all trying to do a podcast together.
I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know. What do you want to do?
with important people just sitting there staring at us, waiting for us to do something productive. But anyways,
Enjoyed the entertainment. Thank you.
you're welcome. I'm glad we could entertain you on a Saturday morning. But yes, so that's kind of where we're at. Just not to go into it too much longer, just a little peek behind the curtain. The other 2 people I have booked, as it stands, because things can always change, is Kimberly Moreland, I believe is her name, from the Oregon Black Pioneers. I was really excited for that. And then Finn wanted me to. Do you want to give away this one?
Oh, I suggested Peter Dibble, whom I have never met, but I've been following his work with considerable enthusiasm on YouTube. He's got a Pixieland video out, which is really excellent, and one on Portland's lost freeways. And there's one other really important one that I'm just blanking right now, which was his most recent one. But anyway, yeah, he does videos, and I think he's based out of Portland. But I mentioned his name, and Marcus was like, "Well, I'll look him up." And I guess he's willing to come on.
Yes, so is the gift of me just or my what do they call it? It's been said many times, like, you just go out and do without any thought or anything at all. I'm like, well, yeah, just send an email, see what happens.
Some people might call that an ambush.
Well, I think Malcolm Gladwell would call it being a connector.
Yeah.
All right, so David, do you have anything this week to talk about, or anything going on in archaeology that's important that we should know about?
Well, we do have City of Salem has a public excavation coming up. By public, I mean that the results are going to be made public. It's going to be sort of adding to the public historical record of City of Salem. I'm not quite sure when those dates are. I think it's the end of next month. But anyways, we're continuing Kimberly Fitzgerald's work on the Methodist missionaries and the boarding school that they set up that became Willamette University. So we're going to be digging kind of around the campus. So we're kind of interested and excited to see what comes up.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing D&D. So exciting.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? I'm curious because everybody's going to laugh at this. What's your character?
Well, Marcus, you asked me to play an archaeologist.
But it
and then
fits!
I told my buddy that, and he's like, "Oh, so you're telling me you didn't already have one of those ready to go?" And yes, I did have one in the barrel, but that's not the point.
Yes! Yes! Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Because, yeah, I thought, it was just, it wasn't like, you need to play this. It was where I'm like, how hilarious would it be if you
Yeah,
played...
no, I drew one up like a couple years ago. I thought, nah, that's a little too on the nose.
No, no, it's perfect. Um, so yeah. Um, and no, we're probably not going to record that. David's a little shy. I'm willing to ruin my reputation. He is not,
Yeah,
because
I appreciate it.
we all know what unsavory things happen in a D&D podcast. Just listen to Legends of Evantris, Once Upon a
Just
Witchlight.
just so much arguing over rules and the wording of this particular thing.
Oh my god, not to get off track, but just one more thing.
Too
I
late.
I've been re-listening to their whole first season Once Upon a Witchlight over again, and I just got to the part where they're like legitimately like there's a little bit of tension going on where they're legitimately arguing on like holding action, using action, and I'm just like, huh.
Watch a table with six nerds become legal experts.
Yeah, yeah, everyone lawyers up really quickly.
Yep.
Um, Finn, what have we got going in the barrel on your end?
Well, I've been working really. I've been dog fooding my new podcast, the Penny Dreadful Story Hour, pretty diligently,
Love
trying to
it.
get the formula worked out. It started out we were speed running through Sweeney Todd, but then that kind of felt like it was boring. So I brought in, four other Penny Dreadfuls, and for a little while I was doing two chapters of Sweeney Todd and one of the others. And it was anyway, it's I'm kind of settling into that and trying to get ahead of the curve. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun. I'm really, um, I'm really, really learning a lot of new Regency and early Victorian slang, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically it. I updated Offbeat Oregon this morning.
actually, I have a question about that inquiring minds might know. Why is it that the show seemingly like you try to go back a certain distance like for example, I know that there were episodes at such and such point this at that point in the year, but now they're gone.
Oh yeah, yeah. I only keep 6 months backlog on the feed because if it gets past 512 bytes or something like that, the Google based stuff cuts it off. At least that was the case when I first launched it. So I set it up as kind of like a rotating cutoff at 6 months. But it comes out every day, so they add up. If I had them all on there, there would probably be, it'd be a queue of you know, 8 or 9 thousand.
That's fine.
Mm.
Keep doing. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't
So
care.
is
But
there a
yeah,
place where people can go and listen to that old backlog, or do they just have to wait for it to rotate?
oh yeah, no. There are on the website at offbeatoregon.com. Every it's there's a big. Well, maybe I'll share my screen and show you guys. Um, Hang on just a second here. Um, uh-huh.
Well, because then you figure that
There it is.
you get the Oh, okay.
I don't go to my website very often, so it's not. Okay, so there's that, and this is make it nice and big. This is an old computer, so it doesn't actually fit. Um, okay, so here's they got this searchable directory of articles with the hashtags over here, and then all of these ones are still on the exclusive to the newspapers, but down here, this is the one that I just updated this morning, and I see that I forgot to upload the photo that goes here, which is a drag, but yeah, you can like hit one of those, and there's oh come on, why is it not playing? I think it's just not. I think it's just not going into the right thing. Anyway, yeah. So they're here. You can download the MP3s if you want, but they're just this is just sort of like the searchable archive.
Right.
And the cool thing about it is you can do a Control F and find like you want Governor Penoyer. There he is. In 1880s Portland, at least one mayor paid to play. Penoyer was one of those mayors. Then here he is again, and the nutty 1890s governor that left Oregon with two Thanksgivings, and there he is in the 1890s March on Washington. And finally, the one that I just uploaded this morning, in which basically he told President Grover Cleveland, to mind his own business, which was,
That's not the words that I see on your screen, Finn.
well, yeah, no. His exact words were these: Washington, I will attend to my business. Let the president attend to his.
Mm.
Which is kind of cool until you get the context from it, which is that he was the president had sent a note out saying, "Hey, everybody, the Chinese." Oh, there it goes. Just stop share. The Chinese Exclusion Act is about to be renewed. There's probably going to be people fussing about it. Try not to let any Chinese people get hurt, please.
Mm.
And the president or the governors of Washington and the Idaho Territory got back and said, "Oh yeah, no problem. We're on it, sir."
Mm.
And Penoyer, he was a populist, white supremacist, unreconstructed Southern Democrat. But it is kind of
Annoyable
cool
lawyer.
for him to have thumbed his nose at the president.
Alrighty, well, I think that's it. We'll get back to you guys more next week on what we're going to be on because you mentioned website stuff, and I'm thinking one of these days we're going to get the network website up.
Yeah.
But it is not this day. This day we are going to be interviewing Darrell Jabin. So now I'm going to give the floor over to you, Darrell. So how long have how long have you been doing your work, and which is I'm sure a very large body of work at this point. And when did you start? When did you start? Why'd you start? All the fun little questions.
All the particulars.
Yes, yes.
Uh, I've actually been doing it since 2009. Actually, the mention as far as the 6,000 miles per year, actually, that was a job I had for 15 years and traveled around the state of Oregon for Public Employees Retirement System. That's my regular job. And traveled, hit 2 dozen cities, and more interesting to find out about Oregon history than it is to sit in a hotel room each night. So that's the type of things that I did. Toured around the area, started taking pictures, and actually um, the basics were way back. I started reading about our national leaders, and recognized I knew more about them than local leaders. And I've lived in Salem for more than 40 years. We have high schools named Sprague, McNary, and McKay, two governors and a U.S. senator. And so I started finding little stories about them and other little interesting stories, and looking for some place to share those particular stories, and found Public Access, which is now Capital Community Media. They have a radio component to it, so it's expanded past television. And that's where I started doing videos, and they encouraged me to do longer videos. Started doing some longer videos. Actually, the longest, and for a little while, I was known as the carousel guy because I did a video on carousels here in Oregon and know more about them than I ever thought I wanted to know. And started sharing those when I went around places because I was still traveling. So share those at libraries, and actually somebody suggested, well, you can also contact retirement homes because retirement homes are frequently interested in presentations. Um, and actually found much easier to do PowerPoint presentations than it is to do uh, create videos and share those. So I have actually do have a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel surpassed 100,000 views a few years ago. I haven't done any new ones for a while, and I've done more on doing PowerPoint presentations. And actually, I've since 2009 done over 500 presentations around the state on various topics. I have expanding list of topics to do. So
I notice
that's
you do like to do a lot of
oops.
architectural stuff. We you and I joke because I believe this was I think maybe well over a year ago at this point that you invited me to Capital Media to discuss things, and Welcome to Oregon is currently running on their radio station. And I remember we joked about it, and it became quite clear that I was the macabre guy, and you were the architecture guy.
Okay.
I because I was talking about dark stories, and I remember the joke was that it wasn't necessarily your forte. You preferred the history of buildings and stuff like that. And it's interesting because I never considered myself too much into architecture, but lately there's certain places like the oh shoot, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the old mall in Coos Bay. I believe it's the first or the second mall that was ever built in Oregon. And immediately when I walked in, I'm like, whoa! You could tell this place was old just by looking at it, and quite frankly, by smelling all the old wood, by how it smelled. It sounds weird, but you can just tell. But yes, you also uh,
Well, I have a Facebook page, and I recognize you have to have some content for that. I do share my videos once a week on that particular spot. On Wednesdays, and you mentioned the buildings. I started doing buildings. I don't remember which one I started doing first, but I've done historic homes, museums, bank buildings. Right now, I'm doing train depots, Carnegie Library. I've done Carnegie Libraries, and do once a week different pull up different buildings around the state. And that's just from going around. I have about 10,000 photos I can pull from in traveling around, taking those shots. And so I've been able to share information about those, do a little research regarding the history of them, and share those particular things. So yeah, they're all kinds of fun as far as little stories go. And I've done some of those, put some of those into PowerPoint presentations. I've done historic homes um, for those particular types of things. I'm not sure I consider myself just a building person. But then Fridays, I'm working on a book on every day in our calendar, and something interesting. Actually, at least two things interesting that happened on those particular days.
That's a
I'm,
great
I,
idea.
yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. People have said, and probably the same with you, and that people said you have to write a book, and I know you've written at least one. How many do you have at this point in time?
There's three of them so far. I'm hoping to get eight out of my back catalog, but
There you go.
yeah,
Okay.
they're kind of time consuming.
I'm
I don't
still working
know.
on the first one.
Uh,
Just because I already have everything written doesn't mean it's easy because you have to go back through, like you figure I've done
yeah,
47 episodes at this point. All of them are 8 to sometimes 12 pages long. And like the first year, this year's going to be a lot shorter because I had, I got COVID in September and I lost a lot of content in October and a lot of stuff like that. But so this year's going to be only like 22, maybe 23. But the first year is 30. So I'm having to go back and edit
yeah.
30 scripts.
And the sad part is that that's a rough draft. So I mean, it saves you the you got a place to start from, but you still, if you just like bundle them up and send them out just like that, you know, that's not fair, or it's not going to be its optimal thing. So you got to go through them, you got to research everything, you got to like look up, see what you missed the first time around because you were on deadline. Yeah,
Or you read the
it's
source material wrong.
yes,
uh,
yeah,
D-
it'll happen.
Darrell, what's trying to think how to word this because there's several answers that would be good. What's the most interesting story you've ever done? What you found the most interesting? I know it's a
Uh,
hard question to answer.
well, yeah, there's different contexts regards to that. Actually, probably one of the most that just, and I found it interesting too in researching and finding out about it, is rail history of Oregon, and that's actually
Mm.
a big, and it's a broad topic, obviously, um, but that's one that an awful lot of people share and like that particular idea of train history. Actually, we filled the I did a presentation up in Lake Theater in Lake Oswego, and ran into one of the people that attended was a former coworker who had retired, and he said, "Darrell, I didn't know you were so popular." I said, "It's not me; it's the topic." And yeah, we've actually filled that particular auditorium in the Lake Theater in that particular presentation. So yeah, it's all of them are interesting to me. I was going to say, as far as the the book and the dates I do share on Friday is something that relates to that something a date in history. Recently, the Oregon lottery actually was one I posted on Friday because it was the 40th anniversary of the Oregon
That
lottery.
was fascinating.
Yeah. So, and I just keep them short on those particular ones. I don't know that I have a particular one that is a favorite. I always like finding information on things. You find those, and because of what I do and the fact that I travel around some, I get the opportunity to see an awful lot and hear an awful lot of stories. When I was doing museum one, just for an instance, uh, I got contacted by a museum down in Cottage Grove that I was not aware of, and they invited me to see it. That they're in a late 1800s octagonal church, and their
Oh,
signature
really?
piece is yeah.
I didn't.
This is
I know
isn't
that
it signature?
church. I didn't know there was a museum in it, though.
Yeah, it's in
Cool.
a neighborhood area. I
Yeah.
know the Bohemia Mining Museum, and that was I said, "Is that you?" And they said, "No, we're different folks," and so they invited me down. And their signature piece is a coat that a woman that lived in Cottage Grove owned for many years, but she was rescued in that coat from the Titanic.
Oh.
Yeah, so and that coat. This is a story. Finn is looking quizzical. I'm surprised he doesn't know that particular
Yeah, I'm
story.
surprised I
But he
doesn't
knew every
know
quirky
too.
story in Oregon.
I, I need to make a note of this one. This
There.
sounds like a great episode. But
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah.
wait. I'm gonna wait until yours comes out, Daryl. I don't
Oh,
want to poach.
oh no, no problem. I think her name is Marion Wright, if I recall correctly, and that particular coat they actually loaned to the Smithsonian when the Smithsonian had a display on the Titanic, as well as the Ronald Reagan Museum had a display and they used it. So actually, they've got a nice case for it, and it's up front in that. Actually, there's a little piece missing. Here's another part of the story. There's a little piece missing out of the coat because the woman cut that out and she sewed little pockets for Bibles for her
Oh,
three sons. Her three sons went to the military, and they all came back safely. So another little aspect, and I'm sure Finn can expand on that. So
Yeah, we always every time you hear Titanic, it's such a significant moment in history. So everybody's eyebrows kind of raise up when you hear that. But when I did the episode "Graveyard of the Pacific," in a way that doesn't surprise me because something shocking that I found out that there was a good number of passengers on the Titanic that had ties to Oregon. They were either on their way to Oregon, they had family in Oregon, they were from Oregon, which I thought was really, really fascinating. So, I mean, surprising, yes. At the same time, no. But that's still really, really cool information that I'm glad we got to document here today.
yeah.
What's your favorite museum?
favorite museum?
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's a much tougher. I've gone to probably 50 of them around, and you find a little interesting in the same situation. I find a little interesting pieces from each of those. That was definitely an interesting piece to find. Um Baker City has an old natatorium, old swimming pool that they converted into a museum, and they actually have some memorabilia from Paint Your Wagon,
Oh,
including
nice.
including No Name City, a little miniature No Name City, which actually it spans about 10 feet long and 4 feet wide or thereabouts um, at that particular museum. So it's just finding those little bits of that you don't see and don't hear about otherwise. So finding something that's unique and be able to share with people. Actually,
I'm
some of the too, and just doing presentations, people come up with to me afterwards and say, that reminds me of my family doing this, and it's a real joy in that particular way. So
I'm jealous, Daryl. I mean, my job keeps me pretty close to home, so I haven't gotten the opportunity to do too much prowling around and looking at stuff like the location where they filmed Paint Your Wagon. I've always wanted to go there. I think when I finally do retire, I'm gonna get myself an MGB and just start driving around the country or around the state.
I feel pleased that I had that opportunity to find all those little spots and stop off. And then you can, of course, do more research on them and find out the other stories regards to
Yeah.
them. So,
When the network makes thousands of dollars, I will buy us all a tour bus and we can go on tour around the
There you
state.
go. We'll be the modern version, historian version of Ken Kesey.
Yes,
That's it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get this the sentiment of museums. It can be so hard to pick a favorite because when you're talking about a museum, you're not just talking about the building itself. You're talking about location. Like I love Central Oregon. Absolutely love it. Wish I could live out there, but man, would I be far away from literally everything I know. All my friends, family, work, everything. But the High Desert Museum has always been way at the top of my list on museums to venture. Did have you ever done any work with them or been there?
I, actually, that's one I haven't even seen.
Oh, I
That's
de-
okay.
I no, I
there, there,
definitely recommend it.
there are plenty out there. Yeah, no, I've seen the Shutes County Historical Society Museum, and that's in an old uh, school, Reed School, which was named for first principal there. So yeah, that's one of the ones I posted as far as museum pieces go, and I've chatted with those folks. Actually, if you want a little interesting story on that, a few years ago, and this is one of those seriously quirky things. I collect Oregon Blue Books, and I'm sure
Ah.
uh, many of you probably know what the Oregon Blue Book is. A fact book and almanac Secretary of State puts out, and I did one for the anniversary, the centennial of the Blue Book. Did a video on it, and so I started going around selling that particular one, actually promoting it and sharing it information on it. And I approached the Deschutes County Historical Society, and they asked me first. Actually, said, "Do you have a web page?" I said, "No, but I have a YouTube channel." And actually, instead of doing the Blue Book, they said, "We have one on amusement parks. Can we share? Can we do presentation on amusement
Oh.
parks?" And so I did that one instead. So yeah, it's kind of quirky things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I made the comment, but because happenstance, you, a lot of the building history fell into your lap. You know, the Carnegies, I mean, it's technically not a building, but you know, the carousels, which are usually housed in buildings anyway. But you know, going into railroad history, that is such a fascinating. I've done a little bit of it myself, and I'm eager to go back because railroad history is tied to so much more than other things like it are tied to. Like, you know, ships aren't usually tied to ghost towns and stuff like that. They're on the water. You do have communities that have ports and stuff, but when you're talking about a railroad, you're talking about connecting communities and talking about logging industry, and it I feel like railroad history in itself comes with quite a bit of mystery and intrigue. You know, you're walking through the woods and you see this unusual grade, and you get curious, and oh, that's a railroad grade out in the middle of nowhere. If you go south of Monmouth, like you're going to Corvallis, if you go as you're going down to I believe I think it's Old Fort Road. In that area, if you look carefully, there used to be a railroad trestle that ran across, and you can still kind of sort of see the grade that they dug. And you figure that trestle has been long gone, long before my time anyway. And then, of course, you have if you go up to like Valsette's, it's kind of cool to see where the old I've driven that railroad grade, and I've nearly wrecked the car on that railroad grade.
Boy.
We went out one summer in a Lumina, in my wife's very first car, her Lumina, and I was driving not very fast, but the shade of a tree hit a dip.
Hit a pothole.
Hit
Yeah,
Yep.
I've done that.
And before I
Yeah.
knew it, whoop.
Yeah,
Actually,
I tried to take a cutoff once. Never mind. Shaggy dog. Shaggy dog story alert. I yield the
uh,
floor.
Valsette's was named because of the Valley and Siletz Railroad. Yeah, Finn knows that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of funny the railroad thing comes up because I'm working right now gathering resources for couple of weeks from now, I want to do a story about the rails to trails in Oregon. I did one on the one down in Cottage Grove that replaced the Blue Goose, but I thought it would be cool to do all the rails to trails, but there are
Yeah,
quite a few of them.
yeah. Banks to Vernonia.
That was the
Uh,
first one, I guess.
was that it?
So, Daryl, I do have a question for you if we can kind of zoom out a little bit here. Now, the topics that you've studied strike me as so variable. You've studied public figures to buildings to railroads. How do you land on each of those topics? Do they just kind of find you, or is it just something that strikes your interest in the moment?
That's a good question. Um, Actually, some of it is finding content. The Facebook ones I started doing. I don't remember which ones I started doing first, but I did museums and historic homes, and it's like, okay, what do I have as far as content goes? Are there enough of these, like Carnegie libraries? Are enough Carnegie libraries to share in those particular areas?
Mm,
The other thing, as far and it's also content related, is I have more than a dozen presentations that I do, and there's a number of retirement homes that I've done presentations at each month for some time. And so rather than repeat those, although some of those individuals would tell you that they probably forget between times anyway, but yeah, I did that with some seniors, and I said I apologize. I remember the facts about particular situations, but I don't remember necessarily how many times I've told individuals the same story.
yes.
And they said that's okay, we'd forget anyway. Um, so uh, but it is also content for that. What other types of things? And so I'm looking at other types of areas. I put together one recently on governors, and I know a little bit about Panoyer, Panoyer the Annoyer there. Um, that Finn referenced, and so it's just that particular content. I'm working on one on inventors and innovators because we have plenty of those individuals around. So it's not related. You're right. It's just random types of things, and some of them indeed have fallen into my lap. I'll share one. I did a presentation. When I was doing the Blue Book video and taking Ann around to retirement homes, I did a presentation down at Eugene Retirement Home, and a gentleman came up to me afterwards and said that he took pictures of Ken Kesey's bus.
Oh,
That's what's kind of interesting. He said, "Yeah, if you want to talk about photography sometime, come up and we can talk." And I found out that he was a personal friend of Paul Kantner, who started Jefferson Airplane.
Oh,
He actually went to day camp with him. And when Paul Kantner started the band, he said, "Well, come on down, hang out with us down in the Bay Area." And Jim Smersich is his name. He was an amateur photographer, but he had access to individuals. So he took pictures of Jimi Hendrix and Grateful Dead members. Uh, he could have lunch with Janis Joplin. Yeah, so he
wow.
knew these people and hung out. He was never a big commercial photographer, uh, but yeah, he had the access and had took pictures. Some of them unpublished, and I did a video about Jim Smersich, and Jim and I actually did some presentations together. So
do you
yeah,
often find that you're able to go into these retirement homes and find folks that you can interview and sort of follow up on and kind of generate content with that?
I have never done that
Mm.
actually. That is another area. Um, Actually, I did one down in Eugene recently, and a woman said that she was 1950s Cherryland Festival queen for in Salem, and she had a scrapbook. She said, "Well, come over to my little apartment area, and I can show you a scrapbook." And she had a picture there with her with Governor McKay and Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan had property out in Eastern Oregon, and showing them having lunch together. Um, so yeah, that's a whole area of things. Actually, I was in a retirement home the other day that somebody said that one of the people that lived there worked on the Astoria Meckler Bridge. Yeah, he's 99 years old, and I'm hoping somebody catches those stories. But yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to do some of that.
Sure.
Well, that's why this show exists now.
There you go. Yeah, it's another opportunity to
Yeah.
share Oregon history.
We're doing our best.
Yeah, there's a place down in Eugene. One of the individuals there, his father and mother worked at Bell Fountain School. Bell Fountain was 1937 state basketball champions. They were a school with about 40 students, and
Mm.
they beat uh, Portland schools with 40 faculty members
Yeah.
to win the state championship. That's when they didn't have those different layers of competition.
I can't believe I've never done an article about the Bell Fountain Group.
Bell Fountain.
Yeah,
Yeah, Joe
it's
Blakely
been a,
did a book on it. But yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely worth a story.
it's been on my list for like almost a decade. It's like, well, I used to work at the Corvallis Gazette Times, and that was our local Benton County boys.
There you go. Yeah, and actually, I knew of it, and then I was traveling Highway 99, just back roads from Eugene, and I saw a little sign saying Bell Fountain, and I said, like, "Okay, gotta go," and popped over there. I've been told there's still the trophies still in the high school. So
I'll bet it is.
yeah,
They wouldn't
yeah,
they wouldn't let anybody take it home. I don't guess.
no, no. Although actually, the Benton County Museum has one of the jerseys and some of the information on the Bell Fountain folks. So
Yeah, Benton County Museum was what they had an exhibit on Thomas B. Slade when I was there, and I had never heard of this guy, but he was from Benton County, and he invented a new type of dirigible, steam powered, all metal airships, which that just sounds so completely steampunk crazy. But apparently they actually worked. Unfortunately, they weren't repairable, so it it overpressurized and blew out and was a complete loss. And then the Great Depression hit, and he hasn't been heard from since. So yeah, like you were saying, Darrell, some amazing inventors out of this state.
amazing stories, yeah, as
Yeah.
you well know.
There's been so much talked about that it's easy to lose track of of what's going on. Did we cover what you're doing at present time?
Well, it's actually sharing all 12 of those presentations sometime or another. Uh, I put together one on 31 women, and I'm doing that for Daughters of American Revolution down in Coos Bay. They're having their annual convention, and they asked me to be a featured speaker for that, which I'm looking forward to. So, you did mention before the broadcast of DB Cooper. Have you
Oh,
heard
DB
DB?
right.
Cooper,
Yes. Thank you
yes.
for
Oh,
reminding
right.
me. The all important subject.
Oh yeah.
So, yes, I can never remember the exact details of the story, but I know it has something to do with you talked about how your is your
Father.
dad in the story of the story of DB Cooper.
Yeah, yeah. And I knew of it, and I hadn't done anything regards to it. I kind of waited on it, and in part, I asked my siblings. I said, "Are you guys okay with me doing this?" And they were fine on it. Actually, I did get contacted not too long ago from a reporter who was doing stories on people involved in the story, and who would put it out there. Um, Actually, the presentation I do said my I call it my father created DB Cooper. And I say that because my father was a reporter for the for United Press International. The book here is Norjack. It's the Ralph Himmelsbach was the FBI investigator over on the case for many years, and he wrote a book on it a few years after the event. And I'd be happy to read this particular part, and this is why I say that my father created DB Cooper. My father was a reporter for United Press International for more than 30 years. Um, as report that Cooper had gone flashed across public and private communication lines and airways, the United Press International reporter by Danvers for United Press, covering his beat at the Portland Police Bureau, recognized FBI agents and casually asked the file clerk what the federal agents were doing there. Oh, they're looking for a guy named Cooper, a DB Cooper. The clerk replied, "Is it something to do with that sky? It's something to do with that skyjacking this afternoon. What's in a name?" From the moment that reporter's story hit the EPI wire, the magical combination of initials took over. Dan Cooper was what he checked in as, was lost to all but the most precise. The skyjacker who had threatened the lives of 42 persons and terrorized an aircraft crew to escape with $200,000 now was known to eternity as D.B. Cooper. Through the power of the press, a legend was born. So that's why
That's
I say my
awesome.
father created. He was the first one with the information down on the wire to calling him DB Cooper. And the FBI was indeed investigating somebody by the name of DB Cooper, lived in the Portland area. They cleared him among thousands of others, but they said, yeah, he was one of those easy ones to clear that he wasn't part of the skyjacking. But it changed from Dan Cooper to DB Cooper, and everybody knows him as DB Cooper these days. So
Yeah,
that's why I say,
and to for those who don't know who DB Cooper is, just to give a quick synopsis. Um, yeah, I mean, you pretty much read out what he did. You know, he just one day decided he wanted to skyjack a plane. He why actually why don't you tell the quick synopsis, Daryl?
yeah, he came to the Portland airport and bought a ticket for $20, one way ticket to Seattle Tacoma area. And once he was on board, he gave a note to the stewardess and said, "I'm hijacking the plane. I have a bomb." And had the stewardess sit next to him. Took the note up to the cockpit and said, "Here are the demands on it." They landed in SeaTac and took off again. Actually, the passengers were released as well as two of the stewardesses um, got off of the plane, and then they headed south. And somewhere around 8 o'clock on November 24th, 1971, he jumped with $200,000 out of the back of the plane. They actually changed planes, and you can't do that anymore. You can't jump out of the back. He did it at 10,000 feet, so there's a question whether he just started tumbling and lost where he was. But the bottom line is nobody ever figured out for certain who he was. They said investigated thousands of people, and it's still a mystery at this point in time. There is an annual convention. Actually, they've had one up in Vancouver, Washington, for all those folks that are still interested in the story.
So, Daryl, so much has been written and filmed about DB Cooper, and some of it is admittedly a lot more dubious than others. Now, since you have kind of a personal tie to this case, do things like conventions and sort of conspiratorial documentary type things, do those amuse you or frustrate you?
They amuse me. Yeah, I don't get frustrated by them. And you like to think people would take a little bit better look at things, but actually, with DB Cooper, since nobody knows who he was, I suppose they can keep those things up. And and there are some, front runner suspects in regards to that. I had to learn more about the whole event than I would have otherwise. I mean, obviously, if you want to do that to do presentations. Um, but yeah, it's definitely amusing. And if it comes to, I did get contacted by the folks that are putting the one together in Vancouver, the convention this fall, and they said, "Would you be interested in being a speaker?" And I said, I affirmed that I would. We haven't figured out exactly what my role might be, but um, yeah, I'm looking forward to that type of situation. So yeah, I'm sure there are some people that have all kinds of things, and I'm sure they'll suggest there were cover ups or something of that sort too. Yeah, but a lot of people have fun with it. I'm sure Himmelsbach wouldn't agree with that. He thought the guy was a terrorist, but which yeah, if you're taking over a plane and doing all that, I can understand. But
I feel like if anybody ever definitively solves the DB Cooper case, then I'm gonna feel like I've been robbed. I just I just like it being a mystery.
Well,
It, it's just
I think
it's just more fun.
I think they're pretty sure of what happened to him because I believe a couple of kids had found along the Columbia River soggy banknotes, and I believe
Oh
it.
yeah, they did find that money, but that
Yeah,
didn't really help very much.
No,
no, but
no, it was found in 1980. There was an 8-year-old who was clearing his space for his family to have a fire and came across $5,800, I think is what it was. He's one of the few that actually did, made some money on the whole thing.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
He more recently sold 15 of the bills for $37,000, I think it was. And he got I think, an reward actually early on in the process as well. But that's the only money that has ever shown up. More recently, I think the more recent news regarding that is Richard McCoy's children. Richard McCoy actually pulled off a similar event a couple years later, bragged about it, got imprisoned like 2 days after doing the event. So I'm not sure he had the cunning ability to actually be DB Cooper, but that's obviously up for debate. And He actually escaped from jail and got killed in a shootout with police. And actually, the police there said the police that shot him said, "I killed DB Cooper." His children, I think, more recently came forward because supposedly their mother had a parachute somewhere in their belongings, and so they wanted the FBI to test that. I don't know if Finn knows more regards to that.
Well, no, but McCoy was a paratrooper. I mean, that's
Oh
why
yeah,
it made sense for him to be like, "Oh, hey, this guy jumped out of a 720. I could do that." I mean, this is just
well, and
classic
that's what they started
copycat.
looking for
Yeah.
is somebody that fit the particulars, or sky jumping. Yeah,
Yeah.
November 24th. It's late at night. Uh, you could go it was a dark and rainy night type of thing, and jumping out of an airplane at 10,000 feet, where airplanes typically fly about 30,000 feet, uh, and so he presumably had some experience in that, and yeah, so they did
Yeah.
look at paratroopers and other people that had that kind of experience. Uh, I think they identified one individual as possible CIA operative. He's a suspect. Yeah, various other they're feeding your conspiracy things. Um, yeah, so there's all kind of interesting stories regarding it. Boeing people, and one guy said, yeah, they FBI had every reason to suspect me. He had posed for a picture in a similar suit, and he had similarities to looking like DB Cooper. So yeah, definitely interesting bits to the story.
Do you think
Yeah.
that he did in fact get maybe blown off course, or but caught in the Columbia River and just got dragged to the bottom?
That's the one that makes some sense because the money was found by the shore of the Columbia River. Um, None of the other funds ever showed up, so the $200,000 minus 5,800, where to go? And although they do dredge the Columbia, you can't reach all areas of it, and I think he went down in the Columbia is my guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's been a popular theory, and you know, it's not an unsatisfying one because I mean, how ironic is it that you get away scot free and you have your trajectory planned, and then a random wind just blows you into the Columbia
There you
River?
go.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness!
my theory about this is that he wasn't able to deploy the parachute and then he just bored into the ground, probably in
Oh,
the Columbia River.
oh,
And the because otherwise that, you know, a deployed parachute, it would float on the river. It would, somebody would have seen it.
that's true. Yeah,
That's my theory. I don't see any possibility that the guy made it. It just,
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah,
This
it's
was Thanksgiving weekend, so I'm not sure
yeah.
people. I mean, there was a huge manhunt in the area.
Oh yeah, and
Mine,
everybody and his dog was out there looking for that guy. $200,000 was a lot of money in
oh, sure.
1970.
I
Chuck, you could
had
buy
somebody
6 or 7 Cadillacs for that.
that. Actually, I did presentation down in Albany. A gentleman that was, I think, part of the National Guard and knew Ralph Himmelsbach and doing the search, did some of the search, and he came to the presentation on that. So, uh, yeah, definitely huge manhunt, and people I'm sure went out and combing every area off the Columbia and say, where's the other dollars? And but yeah, I think he went down. And I did see some video where somebody said, yeah, as soon as he jumped out of the plane, he probably just started tumbling, and yeah, it could have been straight down.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. What was it? 19.
70.
71.
Was it 71? Oh, yeah, I always get it mixed up with the exploding whale.
So yeah. So,
One of them was in 70 and one was in 71.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
I saw
two
William
events in
Sullivan's going to
Oregon.
do something on the exploding whale and DB Cooper.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
and William Sullivan actually did a fictitious book on DB Cooper. That there
Exploding
was a good
Cooper.
DB Cooper who ends up getting killed at the end, and a no, I'm sorry, good DB Cooper that actually flies away in a hot air balloon at the end, and
Oh,
a bad DB Cooper ends up getting killed. So two people were involved in it supposedly.
Yeah. Adjusted for inflation, 200,000 is about 1.6 million.
There you go. Okay.
that still doesn't see. I mean, that's like Dr. Evil levels. $1 million still
Well,
seems inadequate to the risk,
and they used to keep money in banks actually to pay off those type of things. They stopped doing that because probably figured out that it just encourages people to do it.
Well, it was the weird thing about that though is that I read this someplace, so I don't completely know it's true. You may know, but they had this money ready to go, but they didn't have it in sequential serial numbers, so they didn't know. They couldn't like say, okay, look for everything from this number to this number. It was just random
Uh,
serial numbers of bills. But
Actually, one of the books on DB Cooper has, I think, all the serial numbers in it. From 1950, 1963, and 1967, if I recall correctly,
mm,
that the bills were. So if you find one of those 20s out there, uh,
yeah, yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, as a souvenir type of thing, it's like, oh, hey, look, one of the 20s that DB Cooper ran off with.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was Brian Ingram that was 8-year-old, and he, as I said,
that
he
sounds
sold it
right.
for $37,000 recently. So some people do have, the actual money somewhere. And I don't know if he kept some of them. I imagine he has some of them too. Still,
Well, we are getting close to
let's talk
wrapping
to
up.
Brian. Sorry.
Does anybody else have any more questions for Darrell? I'll take that enigmatic silence as an affirmative. Well,
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
Daryl, one question I have. When's your next presentation?
Actually, public one is Coos Bay Library. Actually, I'm going down as I said, the Daughters of American Revolution. Then the day afterwards, I'm doing one on Oregon parks, the history of Oregon parks. Samuel Boardman in Oregon parks.
oh,
I
nice.
contacted,
Nice.
yeah, I contacted the Coos Bay Library, and so I'm doing that on. I think it's a Saturday, the 17th of May, if I recall correctly.
I did a
That's
little
a
bit of
great library.
I did a little bit of writing on Samuel Boardman when I think when I wrote for State Parks, or maybe it's because I wrote for Silver Falls. I can't remember. But yeah. Alrighty, gentlemen, I promise I'm ready. Thank you so much for joining us. This episode was brought to you by the Oregon Voices Network, a historical podcast network that brings you amazing shows like Welcome to Oregon, a Oregon history and lore podcast, Offbeat Oregon, and the Penny Dreadful Story Hour. So, I was going to read that normally. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it in Finn's. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Suppose you want to be part of the conversation. In that case, we do have a Facebook group that you can check out for the Oregon Voices Network, where you will find us and many of the guests we have on this show. And if you love our work, you should seriously consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/Oregon Voices Network. The money goes towards all of our projects and helps us pay for things like software, assets, and more. If you are listening to the audio version of this show, you can find more of our work on YouTube at youtube.com/Oregon Voices Network. All right, gentlemen, where can people find you and your works, starting with David?
I have most social media platforms. You can usually find me at the Spirit of PDX.
Finn?
Well, I have a Facebook account that I don't get very active on. But that's about it for me for social media. I've sort of withdrawn from the space. But offbeatoregon.com, and you can reach me at finn@offbeatoregon.com. And yeah, I guess that's probably about it.
And Darrell, plug your stuff.
Great. Facebook is Oregon, Darrell Jabin, Oregon's traveling historian, and YouTube channel is Darrell Jabin, DarrellJabin, and you'll find my YouTube channel. So those at this point in time, that's what I have.
Awesome. Yay, we did it. Episode 2 in the bag.
Right on. Woohoo!
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. For myself
Thanks
and the
again,
crew.
Pamela.
Later.
Cheers.